evening, everyone. I'm Larry Kudlow. Welcome back to the Kudlow Report, where we believe free market capitalism is the best path to prosperity. A short time ago, I spoke with Arizona Republican Senator John McCain. He's ranking member on the Senate Armed Services Committee and, of course, former Republican presidential standard bearer. We talked about the Obama surge and some other hot topics on Capitol Hill. Take a listen. I want to begin with President Obama's Afghan surge, his announcement last night. And this morning, you went toe-to-toe with Defense Secretary Robert Gates on a key aspect of this issue. And we're going to play it. Please take a listen.
I say with respect, Secretary Gates, my question is will the date of withdrawal of 2011, which the President said, will be based on an arbitrary date of July 2011, regardless of conditions on the ground?
I think it's the judgment of all of us in the Department of Defense involved in this process that we will be in a position in particularly uncontested areas where we will be able to begin that transition in
Well, let's
July
suppose you're not.
2011.
Let's suppose you're not. Let's suppose that conditions on the ground so that our commanders believe that it would jeopardize the success of the mission if we start a withdrawal in July 2011.
All right, that's where our tape ends, and I'm not sure what Mr. Gates said, but more importantly, Senator McCain, did you get satisfaction on this question?
I did not, Larry, but I also want to emphasize that I support this strategy. I think the President did the right thing. I think I would have liked to have seen more troops, obviously, but General McChrystal says he can do the job. This is a counterinsurgency strategy that I have significant confidence can succeed. I am concerned about this July 2011 issue, as you just ran the clip, and because, you know, you don't want to tell your enemies when you're leaving. You want to be able to leave once you have succeeded.
You know, I read the president. I knew this was going to come up, whether or not you came on the show tonight. We're thrilled to have you, as always. But I took a careful look at this. Let me just read from President Obama's West Point speech on this. He is saying the additional American and international troops will allow us to accelerate handing over responsibility to the Afghan forces. And then he goes on to say in the speech, this is the key, and allow us to begin the transfer of our forces out of Afghanistan on July of 2011, just as we have done in Iraq, and we will execute this transition responsibly, taking into account conditions on the ground. So he says it will allow us to begin to withdraw, taking account of conditions on the ground. Now, listen, this is above my pay grade, but it sounds to me like he's meeting your requirement. It sounds a lot like what President George W. Bush said on his surge.
Well, when we did the surge, the object was to clear, hold, and build. And by the way, we can talk about the build part of the Afghanistan scenario, which I think is still badly lacking. But so, and then once we had achieved that success, trained up and operated with the Iraqi military, that's when we decided we can withdraw, and we'll be, at the Iraqis' request, withdrawing almost completely here rather soon. That's different from sending a message to your friends and your allies and your enemies that you are leaving on a date certain. Now, I believe that with this strategy, by July 2011, that we'll be in pretty good shape and can begin withdrawal. But you don't announce it ahead of time, because success is what breeds the ability to withdraw.
So essentially, you would have rather this whole paragraph not have been in the speech. That's your basic point.
Yeah, I would rather have not been in the speech, but I want to say that the President has done the right thing. And look, the process was protracted and dragged out, and I didn't like that and all that, but that's past. Now, I want to support the President, get those troops over there as quickly as possible, stabilize this situation, and then be able to withdraw as Afghanistan can not only stand on its feet, but Afghanistan will not return to a base for attacks on the United States and our allies.
All right, let me raise one other issue, and then I want to get on to health care, because I know you're very active on that issue, too. But in your press release today, in your statement before the committee, you expressed concern about the civilian clear, hold, and build, and I appreciate that. But President Obama last night made it very clear that he had no intention of nation building and no intention of keeping us in Afghanistan, I don't know for how long, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever. I've never known you to be a nation builder. You've always been in favor of our national security. What is your beef with him on this point?
I don't have a beef with him on this point. I think, but the fact is, you've got to have a secure environment in order for the political, economic, and other aspects of a normal existence be there. Otherwise, you end up with a situation that as soon as you leave, the situation deteriorates again. So it's not nation building, but it's establishing an environment of which the civil side is very important, in which the people will be satisfied. You have all of the environment where they will continue to defend themselves and resist radical Islamic extremists. You see what I mean? It's not nation building. It's providing an environment that won't deteriorate right away, such as we did in the early days of Vietnam and such as we did in the early days in Iraq.
So to keep the Taliban out, let's say, just to keep in their own neighborhoods and towns, is that what you're saying?
But the way you keep them out and the way you go after them is you train the Afghans, you operate with them to make them a viable military force, as well as a government that people can trust and look up to, as well as an environment where the economic situation, and that's not is satisfactory to them. That's not nation building. That's establishing an environment which will lead to stability and the resistance to radical Islamic extremism.
Basically, are you worried that the president's just going to pull out before the job's done? Is that what you're saying, Senator McCain?
No, I don't think the president will do that. I really don't. I think the president articulated an excellent policy, well-resourced, supported by our great military leadership. I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to, he's taking a risk here politically as well as strategically. But look, I support it, and I'll do everything I can to see it succeed to help him.
Just to take this and segue into some domestic issues in the economy, a lot of your Senate colleagues and House colleagues on the Democratic side would like to raise taxes, maybe across the board, but certainly on the upper income people by 5% or so to pay for the Afghan surge. What is your thinking on that one?
My thinking is they never miss an opportunity to try to get rich people like you, Larry, and I'm with them every step of the way, and everybody that's on your show with you.
Senator, I'm not as rich as I used to be. This has been a very bad downturn, sir.
Well, Larry, here's the point. If we had just frozen discriminatory spending at last year's level, okay? At last year's level, we could save about 60 to 70 to 80 billion dollars. If we had just had all of our appropriations bills frozen at last year's level, that would have been plenty to fund the troops going to Afghanistan certainly for the rest of this year. And I'd love to go through the budget and find those projects that are earmarked pork barrel corruption in this process we have, and I could find them lots of money.
Well, I'll bet you could. I'd love to see that exercise. I think that would be a real treat. Let me ask you about health care. You're very active in the health care, and there's a news story out today. Senator McCain says resubmit the Medicare spending cuts to restore them in committee, and also to start going after the tax hikes. Some of these estimates now, $3 trillion in spending between now and 2020, according to some of the estimates from Senator Judd Gregg. That's going to be close to $1 trillion of tax increases. What can you do about this, Senator McCain?
Well, the first thing we can do is send this bill back to the Finance Committee and tell them not to cut Medicare. Look, there's savings in Medicare, there's savings in malpractice reform, there's lots of savings, but to just say you're going to have a draconian across-the-board cuts of $483 billion doesn't work. And the other part of this, as you know, is that, and I don't know why people don't trying to get this message out. This is a great scam. This is Enron accounting, as you know, but people don't seem to understand. For the first 4 years, you pay the taxes, you lose the benefits, and then after 4 years, the benefits kick in. Now look, you want to buy a house, and you go down, you sit down, and you say, okay, I'm going to make payments for 4 years before I can move in? That's crazy stuff. And they're doing it because it's a budgetary gimmick.
Can you beat it?
I'll tell you, the American people, one thing about senior citizens, all citizens are more aware than we give them credit for. Senior citizens are far, very sophisticated, and we're hearing from them by the millions. They know what happens if Medicare is cut. I hear from people every day that say, look, I paid into Medicare all my life. You're going to take it away from me now? You cannot make these kinds of cuts in Medicare without eventually rationing Medicare and reducing the benefits. It's just a fact, and it's going broke anyway, as you know. So they're taking $483 billion out of Medicare to fund a new entitlement program.
Well, speaking of going broke, there's a job summit, so-called, in the White House tomorrow. I don't know, 20, 30, 40 CEOs are going to be flying in to meet and talk about jobs. Can we get out of that meeting without further bankrupting the country? And what do you make of this? What should we be doing to create jobs?
I'd like for the president to have fly in the small business people that in my state that can't get a line of credit. The homeowner that just, came to a town hall meeting I had that with 2 children that just is thrown out of her house and couldn't get an extension of credit. I'd like to have some of those people fly in. And I'll tell you, one of the things they tell the president, let's get small business going again. Let's give them a payroll tax cut. Let's have a corporate tax cut. Let's do things that really create jobs rather than all these so-called stimulus projects, which really have certainly not met the predictions that his economists and he predicted when we passed that massive stimulus bill. And they know that their kids' futures are that we're committing generational theft.
All right, Senator John McCain, we appreciate you coming back on, sir. All the best.
Thank you, and it's your taxes I'm going to raise, Larry.
John, you are the best.